Yes, yes, college football fans. Round one is now in the books. Now we prepare for round number two, and it kicks off tonight with a matchup, well, that could very well determine the national championship. Well, almost. You've got one quarterback out to prove he's just not along for the ride, and you've got another quarterback proving that he's not just a freshman sensation. Or maybe it's not just the guys around him. Either way, both of these quarterbacks must have their best on display for their team to win. Now, whether it's not committing the big turnover or making the big play and just running the game plan. Either way, I think one team understands what's at stake while the other is just hoping to prove they belong. These stories and more on this edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. To the Rose Bowl, as we will watch the Alabama Crimson Tide face off against the Big Ten undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. Now, many of you are going to say, well, I think this is a mismatch given the fact that Alabama's lost 3 games and Indiana has not been beaten yet. I'm not going to say that. Because for what it's worth, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say it, and I'm just going to say this one time. When you don't lose a game, yes, you have a lot of momentum going with you, but the issue at hand is, where are your mistakes at? It's very difficult to pinpoint mistakes in victory. A lot of people say, "Oh, yes, you can. You can figure out mistakes in victory." Okay. Through my experience, when I've failed or I've lost or whatever the case may be, I've always found myself being able to, better observe certain things. They're like glaring black eyes, if you will. When you can see your mistakes as plain as day, most of the time when people start seeing those things, predominantly in losses, it just sticks out. So many people really are willing to point them out when they're that glaring. And honestly, when people start to point fingers and tell you about, well, you should do this or you should do that, or well, you should do this or you should do that. Needless to say, it's not fun when you have to look yourself in the mirror, especially after a loss. It's much easier to mask those mistakes. And if you watch enough TV and you've watched enough, if you watched enough individuals critique of games such as myself, it's pretty obvious when you start watching that many people don't really totally watch games through to through. They basically just give you critiques and they say, oh, they're basically score watching as far as, what they look at in the score box and they basically deviate from it. But when I watch this football game, in my head, what I see an Indiana team that understands they slayed a dragon. Now, it's not the dragon because when you really analyze it and you think about it, it's not the SEC dragon. Now, am I going to be one of those guys that's going to talk about the SEC? Absolutely not. What I am going to say is this. It's a much different element when you slay one of those dragons that, you have not been able to give it over the hump with. Now, I get it. Ohio State is one of those, but it's not one of those long, drawn-out processes where you're going for a Big Ten championship. You just got here. Now you're in a situation where you got another opportunity to slay another dragon, much like Notre Dame with getting their first win in the college football playoff against these same Indiana Hoosiers, as well as slaying an SEC football team like Georgia. Now you've got a football team in Indiana that has beaten an Ohio State team. Now they're trying to stake their claim as one of the best in the world, or in the country, if you will. But then here comes Alabama, whom, in my opinion, I don't know how Oklahoma went from scoring 17 points. And I said this in the show that was deleted, you guys, but I felt like that game was a fluke. I'm sorry if I offend anybody with that, but I just felt like that game was a fluke. I felt like it was a game that when you watched it, it looked like Oklahoma just packed it in and basically said in a nutshell, hey, we got this. Despite the fact they dropped the football on a pretty much a ball that was going in. I don't think, now this is not the takeaway. I know there's going to be Crimson Tide fans in here ready to jump down my throat. But, look, Crimson Tide fans, look, you still haven't established the run. You did better against Oklahoma, but it took everything you had just to run it, the few times you did. Ty Simpson is pretty remarkable. He was dang near mistake-free against Oklahoma. Yeah, I mean, I just looked it up to the exact opposite of what happened in Tuscaloosa. Alabama was the recipient of a lot of the same turnovers that got them beat weeks ago. So, to me, that is what's going to be the mark of this game, because you're not throwing the football on them. You're not running it on them either. So, the only question I have is, what has Kalen DeBoer got up his sleeve? I mean, that's really the only thing left is, what do you have up your sleeve? Because it's pretty daggum obvious that there's nothing else you can do to this team that is going to push them out of what they do. And I'm going to be honest, Alabama, yes, you got Jeremy Bernard and you got Ryan Williams. And it would be about time for Ryan Williams to finally come out of whatever it is that's going on with him. Because I'm going to be honest, he was a no-show in that Oklahoma game, and Jeremy Bernard was a show-up. However, I will say that I think Alabama found themselves something in this game against Oklahoma. And realistically, it needs to show up more in Isaiah Horton. Like I said, I don't know what's going on with Ryan Williams. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury, but Horton was a breath of fresh air for this football team in this game against Oklahoma. Because realistically, if you take him away, 3 catches, 56 yards, 5 catches, 65 yards. You take him away, and realistically, this ain't gonna be a good game, because he made some huge grabs in this game. He's 6'4", 208 pounds. He's gonna have to have a huge night, and you are going to have to test this Indiana defense down the field. There ain't no getting around it. You're gonna have to test them down the field. And Horton is the perfect weapon. He's long, he's fast, and he's able to do some really different things for this offense. And you're going to have to include him. And that also includes Lotzier Brooks, who had 2 touchdowns in that game. The true freshman, 5'9", 191. He came out and was just blistering those guys. He had 5 catches, 79 yards, and 2 scores. So between he and Brooks, you're going to have to go to some different ideas. And now listen, this is a lot of this success that you can cater to Alabama is catered to Ty Simpson, because ultimately Kalen DeBoer, that was what was behind up his sleeve. He knew he had different guys that he could used to win. And ultimately, like, I'm not saying we underestimated them, because even still, when you bring those two guys out, I get it. They won the game. But let's keep it in perspective, Gabbers. This game should have been ugly either way. Oklahoma couldn't get it done, and it took Alabama too long to get going. You do this against this Indiana team, ain't going to be no game to win. And this defense for Alabama, let's look, if John Mateer can do what he did in those first couple of drives in a neutral site. Now, I'm not saying that Fernando Mendoza is the best thing since now laters. But I am saying is that Roman Hemby and this offense want to run the football along with Kalen Black. This football team likes to run the ball. And what is one of the biggest weaknesses for the Tide? Stopping the run. We can sit here and we can question all day, every day about what Alabama's getting back and this, that, and the other. I just find it funny that nobody talks about other teams getting their players back and so on and so forth, and who they're getting back and blah, 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 blah. What I'm looking at here is it's the college football playoff. Yes, Alabama was able to hold the Oklahoma Sooners to only 55 yards on the ground on 33 carries. I get that. But Mateer ain't Fernando Mendoza. I mean, he threw for 307, granted. Should have been more for that. If that running back for Oklahoma catches the ball. I know drops a part of it. But theoretically, these Indiana guys ain't going to drop the ball. They didn't face an Elijah Surratt. And when you got to deal with him, Omar Cooper. Now, granted, these guys don't have 1,000 yards receiving, but you look at the size on these guys. Cooper 6'2", 201, and then of course Surratt is 6'2", 209, and he's got 12 touchdowns. So you got some guys you're gonna have to keep an eye on, because if you don't, they're gonna hurt you. And then you've got the big 6'4" EJ Williams Jr. So this game could turn into a shootout. But I think ultimately it's going to be in order for Alabama to even have a chance in this day, you're going to have to slow down Indiana's run game. Because you do not want this team to get into a misdirection, fake the run type of situation, because that's when they get you. When they can fake handoffs and get guys one-on-one or get the safeties peeping inside the backfield, linebackers looking, and they can throw behind you, that's when they get you. So it's imperative that Alabama do something they have not done except before last week or 2 weeks ago, which was stop the run. I see them doing a pretty good job of it, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think Mendoza does just enough, but I think it's the running game. I think what's going to happen, people have said Alabama needs to make Mendoza beat them. Sounds like a good plan. But Kurt Signegi's probably got that figured out already. So I'm taking the Hoosiers by 2 scores. Let me know what you guys think about this second round matchup between the Alabama Crimson Tide and the Indiana Hoosiers. Tell me who wins and why. What do you think about these? Who do you think is going to be the player of this game? Who do you think is going to stake their claim as the big-time baller in this match? Hit me down in the comments. Make sure you check out my other 3 shows on this topic. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you can get the other 3 shows that I have out on the college football second round matchups that's coming up coming up New Year's Day. Make sure you go over to Facebook at Gridiron Gab Triple Option so you can keep up with the group as well as the page. And finally, go over to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo so you can stay with me on all my shenanigans. I will be caught up when, during, and in the near off season. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.